What happens when two successful entrepreneurs get together for a drink? They talk shop, of course. So grab your favorite cocktail and sit alongside Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso, two seasoned business leaders that have driven their own companies to success, as they share from their experience and dive deep into the secret sauce that can turn a company around. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey, welcome back. We're at the CEO Podcast. I'm Scott DeLong. This is Vince Moiso. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Vince has recently published a book, your first book that got out, and it is called How to Survive the Wilderness. So this is on Amazon. Where else can they get this?
Yeah, right now, Amazon or my website, sirthrive.us.
Sirthrive.us.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today is a little bit different than the conversational style. We're going to do a kind of an interview, and I'm going to kind of read through the chapter headings, and I want you to give me a quick synopsis of what you mean by that.
Sure.
Right. Not all the details, not all that. We're going to get through this. I might have a question too, but we'll find out.
Well, it's topics, many of them that we've already discussed on podcasts, or certainly like at least related, and then others that certainly are what I'd say. They're similar, right? Like they're all symbiotic.
We only know a couple things.
Yeah.
Right.
Only a few.
Only a couple things. So anyway, the opening of the book tells a little bit about your story, which we've done on previous podcasts.
Yeah.
And so our audience knows who you are and what your background is and where all this comes from.
Yeah.
So let's just go down into the chapter headings, or at least the ones that I picked out that I want to talk a little bit about. So
sure.
The first one is the recognition of the first step. Or recognition is the first step. Sorry about that. Yeah,
no, recognition is the first step for me. And the reason I chose, I was very intentional with every title of every chapter. Mm-hmm. There's 3 parts to the book. So I separate, several of the chapters within the book. And recognition is a really big thing. And I discovered that in the self-development process, especially that I've been going through in the last decade. And what I mean by that is recognizing the triggers, right, that might pull you in a bad direction, right? The thing that might really set you off. The other thing is just recognizing the behavior in yourself. I think especially leaders, especially entrepreneurs, high performers often have blind spots. And I think recognizing those in yourself is really the first step, because if you don't know that those exist, like if you haven't looked in a mirror and figured out, wow, okay, these are the things that I'm recognizing within myself that I need to work on, then it's pretty hard to take the next steps.
Or have anybody else do the same thing that you're leading.
Right.
Good.
Right, because it's lost on you. So, Scott, if you were coaching me, well, let's just use your EQ course and talk about emotional intelligence. And in taking your course, it really, I had enough of a background to make that course so meaningful, right? Mm-hmm. And then I had the recognition of some of the things that I work on. In fact, I was having a conversation the other day, and I was asked, well, you seem, Vince, that you really know a lot about emotional intelligence. So what did you get out of Scott's course? And I said, what it was is I had the emotional intelligence enough to be aware of others, and I wasn't self-aware. And my biggest takeaway from your course was the self-awareness of what was happening when I stepped into a room, when I was leading a meeting or things like that. I wasn't aware. I was aware of the behavior around me.
Which in your book, you're talking about as the most important thing.
It is.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Absolutely.
Great.
You got it.
How about don't apologize for being who you are?
Yeah, that's a great one for me. It took me probably till I was almost 40 years old to figure out that I was pretty exhausted trying to be a different person for all my different communities in my life.
Who others thought you should be?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a hell of a thing to try and assume what others want you to be and then try to be that in every situation. I was just exhausted. And, so I work very hard these days on just being me, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just not. You know what? The more genuine and the more authentic that you are, the better your relationships are, the more productive you are, and life in general, I just think changes. It's changed for me. and authenticity is a big part of that. Now, I say something in the book is pretty funny, is when I say don't apologize for being who you are, if you're an asshole, that doesn't apply to you, right? You don't get to keep being an asshole.
So I can continue to apologize, what you're telling me? All right, great. How about drown out the noise? What do you mean by drown out the noise?
Yeah, when I talk about drown out the noise, we all have a lot of noise in our lives, right? There's a lot of exterior things going on, and that might be from relationships to work to kids or
friends,
parents
whoever,
or
sure.
friends,
Yeah.
or whatever might be going on and not be going on is all really noise. So it's that kind of voice in your head that you're constantly chattering with, and it's really what I'm talking about is those things that distract you from whatever your goal might be or wherever you're headed. And I learned it playing sports, so you can relate to this, right? When I was on a football field in a game and I'm playing quarterback, and the noise is deafening,
Right.
and I didn't hear it. I didn't hear
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I had a coach one time take me back to that place, and I went, oh wow, I do have the ability to drown the noise out. So why has my life become so noisy all of a sudden?
You know what I find funny about that? So now being older, I play golf and tennis, and when we were playing team sports, we wanted all that cheering and that noise, right?
Yeah.
But if you cough while someone's trying to putt, they just freak out.
Yeah.
Those folks can't drown out the noise.
Well, think about so it's funny that you bring up golf, and I'll use this analogy. It's not in the book, so this is something that's a little off the pages. I had the opportunity to go to the Masters, and so I was at Augusta, and I've never seen anything like it. Like I recommend anybody who's a fan of sport in general, this is one that you got to go to. And Tiger Woods was there, all the guys that you would expect. I was there the year Jordan Spieth won it. Okay. And it is literally deafening, like how these guys can focus with everybody standing up the runway or right in their, and sometimes in their line of sight for when they're driving a golf ball. And I watched the focus on Jordan Spieth, on Tiger Woods, and I watched them completely drown that noise out and just get honed in on what they need to do.
Drown out the noise so you can focus on what's important.
Yeah.
Cool. Surviving the winter. This one's a little bit different topic. It's like, what do you mean? What's surviving the winter?
I talk about there's always a winter. There's seasons in business, and I don't care what business you're in. Or what industry you're in. It's very cyclical. All businesses tend to be. Some are incredibly seasonal. Some are just cyclical, right? And so winter is just the analogy that in business we're gonna have the cold winter, right?
Cold winter, short, dark days.
It was my homage to Game of Thrones. I'm a Game of Thrones fan. Read the books and obviously followed the series. And the chapter starts off as winter is coming, which means winter is always coming, right? Yeah. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you're a high performer, get ready for the winters, man. You better have your winter gear and you better be prepared. So what I talk about is preparation. Okay. And I'm referring to that as just like, hey, if look, you live in California, you live in Florida, right? And all of a sudden you go to New York in December and you bring your shorts and flip-flops. You're not very prepared. Yeah, you didn't know where you were going. You didn't check it out ahead of time and plan and prepare for it.
Okay. Be accountable to others. I like this one.
Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory, but what'd you put this in the book for?
Well, accountability is a really big thing, and we've talked quite a bit about accountability. And I think I didn't, probably until the last maybe 7-8 years, I just didn't realize how important accountability was in my life and how much I needed to be held accountable. So when I say be accountable to others, right, is as leaders and high performers, we often hold everybody else accountable, don't we?
That's our job.
Right?
Sure.
That's our job.
Sure.
Who's holding us accountable?
Right.
And if I'm going to be genuine and be authentic, like I talked about earlier, and I'm going to hold everybody accountable, right? then I should be equally accountable to them.
Yeah. So in my organization, and this is what I talk about in the empowerment piece, they are to hold me accountable as well. Not just hold it to myself to do it, because I'm going to miss stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss nuances that people should be able to point out. And you talked about in an earlier podcast about being able to call you out.
Yeah.
And allowing people to do that. So
yeah.
Really cool. Next one is own your calendar.
I love this one.
Yeah.
This is my favorite topic. By the way, I would love to do an entire podcast on owning your calendar. And I've taught on this. I coach on this in a big way. And what I mean by it is, especially in sales. So let me just in this particular case, I'm going to just cut right into the high performer, and I'm going to go right into the salesperson. I think it's most applicable to the salesperson. And any leader, right? We're busy, right? And our calendars are typically incredibly full. What I find about the typical salesperson is they say yes all the time to everything, to everybody. Yeah. And what's funny is they don't realize the damage that does to everybody else in the meetings that they had in place, because oftentimes they overlap. Oh, I gotta, you're in a meeting with somebody and you take a call and you step out, right? Or you had something scheduled with me at 11 o'clock, and then 30 minutes before you tell me, oh, sorry, customer XYZ wanted to take a meeting at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to that meeting instead. Like, the thing
so
is,
you'll turn a customer down.
Yeah,
that wants an immediate meeting if you already have something on your calendar.
Well, no, hang on. Let me give you the skill set, because there's a skill to owning your calendar. So when I schedule a meeting with you, my job is I've got to give you ample time. One, if I'm going to reset on that. Okay. And two, I got to give you options on resetting on that. So it is okay to change an appointment, right? I'm not saying don't change an appointment. What I'm saying is be respectful of the other person's time. Got it. But really, that only happens for me, I'd say 2 to 5% of the time. 95% of the time, I hold to my calendar. So I've never had somebody. So here's what it sounds like. So customer XYZ, who's important, right? And I've got time set with Scott at 11 o'clock. And they say, hey, Vince, I'd like to meet with you at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. And I say, you know what? I actually have a meeting at that time. I'm available at this time and this time. Would that work for you? Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Well, how about Thursday? I'm available this time and that time. Yeah, that works for me. I've never once had a customer say, the only time I can meet is at that 11 o'clock. Right. Here's what the salesperson typically does, though. They don't ask those questions. They don't challenge. They're so afraid. They lead by fear, and they don't own their calendar. So when I say own your calendar, I put everything on my Outlook calendar, from personal stuff to business stuff to meetings. If I'm just going to make a phone call, it might not even be scheduled. It might just be drive time. I put it all on there so I have it blocked off so that I know if I'm trying to schedule things, right, I'm owning that part of my calendar.
Where the gaps are, where the spaces are that you can do things with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an incredibly calendared individual, but owning your calendar is really what I mean is like owning your time and being responsible for your time, and at the same time being respectful for others' time.
Good. How about don't be a hypocrite? It's a good chapter title.
Yeah.
A good way of life.
Yeah. So it's the adage, right? Do as I say, not as I do, right? So as a leader, we have a responsibility to follow through and lead by example, right? So if I'm going to tell you to do something, if you work with me or work for me, right, and I ask you to do something, I assign a task for you on a project that we're working on, get to have it in time, done by Friday at 10 a.m. And then in return, I get assigned a task, and then I don't, I ignore it. Mm-hmm. I don't answer. I don't respond. Mm-hmm. A week goes by. There's a follow up, and I'll get to it, right? So don't be a hypocrite, right? Don't expect others to do what you're not willing to do.
Yeah, and that ties really well into to be accountable to others as well. So a lot of these topics can overlap, much as most of our podcasts have a lot of overlap in them. Mm-hmm. So here's one that brings in, I'm going to say this is going to come from your sports background, just the way it's phrased is understand the difference between being a pro and being an amateur.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean, and why would you say that?
Well, okay. First off, it's a book. that I'm referencing, and it's one of my favorite books, and in fact really inspired the length of my book and the simplicity of my book.
Okay.
Stephen Pressfield is the author, and it's called Turning Pro. So what the significance of being a pro versus being an amateur is the professional leads by example, the amateur does not. The professional shows up every day, day in and day out, is not complaining and is doing the work that's necessary to get to the goal.
Showing up prepared.
And showing up incredibly prepared. But well, for me, showing up is synonymous with showing up being prepared, right?
Well, not everyone's like that.
Yeah. So and the amateur isn't. The amateur isn't showing up sometimes at all.
So that amateur might show up but unprepared, ready to wing it because they're smart. They've got equipped for everything. Yeah. But you can tell.
Well, and even more so, the pro is not only showing up prepared for that moment, but is also showing up. Like if I'm not, I'll give you an example. So if I'm not necessarily going to lead the meeting that day, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still prepared to lead the meeting. So that's what differentiates a pro versus an amateur. So if I get called on to lead the meeting because the person who was going to lead the meeting all of a sudden can't make it there, I'm ready to go. Put me in, coach. Good. So, that's the pro. And on top of that is the professional also doesn't need the recognition, right? I'm not doing it for the recognition. Do I like recognition? Yeah, sure. Like every human being, I like recognition. I don't need it. Okay. I show up, I'm going to work with my team, and I'm a team player. The amateur is showing up for themselves.
Okay. So I like this one in the way you've linked them together. So being a generous giver, a lot of people can do that really well. Yeah. The back half of that and a humble receiver.
Terrible receiver.
Yeah. Well, let's write a new book then.
Yeah. This is something that I continue to work on. I have a hard time receiving compliments. I have a hard time allowing someone to pay for a meal, let alone getting a gift. Yeah. Or something special that somebody might want to give. Even advice, I have a hard time receiving that. And advice is a gift, guys. Let's just
critique
be straight.
Critique is a gift.
It's a gift.
Somebody's going to critique me. They're actually doing that because they're trying to help me.
It's a gift, and that's very genuine. And I've had a hard time receiving those type of things. I'm a giver. I have no problem giving, as most people don't have a problem giving. I enjoy it. The funny part is, if you've ever read the 5 love languages, so my love language is acts of service, like off the charts. I don't care about all the other stuff. Literally, I score incredibly low to 0 on the other things. And I'm very high on acts of service. And what's important to that and relatable to that is, it's laughable that I have a hard time receiving when my love language is, Scott, if you do something for me, like that's the best thing. Yeah. You gave me, out of nowhere, you gave me a University of San Diego sweatshirt, right? And while that was a gift, it was still an act of service that was, unbelievable. The way that you set up when I show up, for the podcast, right? I tell you before I'm coming to the podcast, Scott, let me bring the table up. Let me get set up for you. Let me do all this. I show up, it's all set up and ready to go. Like, to me, man, that's the best thing that anybody could do for me.
Because you love me?
That I am, Scott. But that's an act of service that, and my wife and I read the 5 love languages together, and her love languages are touch and words of affirmation. Yeah. And what's great is we understand now each other's love language.
So you can speak to them, the other in their language.
It's so big. And so now, when I learned that was a big shift for me. That's why I bring that up. It was a big mental shift that, oh wow, I need to be a humble receiver, and I'm not right now.
So it's a really simple technique that I like to use. I wasn't a very good receiver. I used to crave compliments, but hate them at the same time. I'd always deflect them, and it was a mess, right? We'll just go with that. So what I learned to do, and I'll tell you how I learned to do it, is just say thank you.
Just say thank you.
That's it.
I love it.
Say thank you.
I love it.
And
so simple.
And the reason that I figured out that I could do that is because by doing that, I'm giving that other person grace. They wanted to
It
give.
is.
If I deflect their compliment, deflect their gift, deflect their whatever, I'm disrespecting that person's intentions.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So
I'm
just
getting,
say thank you.
I love it. It's such a simple thing to do. I couldn't agree more. I'm getting better at the meals. When somebody wants to pay for a meal, they genuinely want to pay for the meal.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes it's best to just go, you know what? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it and I'm still working on it.
All right. Be present.
Yeah,
That circles everything you talk about.
no question.
Be present.
When you get to this point in the book, and you've worked on all these things, right? Now the next thing is you're not looking back, and you're not spending a bunch of time in the past, and you're not spending a bunch of time too far out in the future. Good. You are present with your life, with your business, with your family, and everything that's going on around you. And I work very hard through meditation and other tools that I have to just be present in my life as much as possible. The more time we focus on the past, which we can absolutely do nothing about, it's just a head game, right? It's just a head game.
Well, it's a good opportunity to learn from stuff. The past is there to learn from. That's it. That's all I see it as. Those are experiences that I should have learned something from.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. And then done, move on. Right. And by the way, conversely, if you're spending too much time in the future, you're thinking and putting a lot of energy out to something that hasn't even happened yet.
And may not happen.
And it creates a lot of fear, believe it or not.
Well, there's a lot of time between here and there that you have no control over the things that happen. So very possible that doesn't happen, that future that you've envisioned.
When I learned to really own my time and own my calendar, and I'm going to go back for a second on the own your calendar topic, because I talk about in that section, I reference another book, great book by Gay Hendricks, and he talks about Einstein time versus Newtonian time. We live in Newtonian time. That's why we have a watch, 24-hour clock, 7-day week, 30-day month. It's lunar. It's a lunar calendar. That's what we live off of, 12 months out of the year.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Einstein time is relative, right? So a lot of people ask me, Vince, I don't know how you have all the time to do all the stuff. I can't believe you wrote a book. How do you have the time to write a book? And I smile because I'm like, I have the exact amount of time that you have.
I do what's important.
Yeah. And so when you start to realize that, under the Einstein time model is that time is relative to you. Yeah. So you get to choose priorities to do what you want to do.
Do I exercise or do I, go have an ice cream or anything?
I laugh when, we show up on Monday and we've got our projects due, right? And we have our team meeting at 9:00 and we're reporting on a few things and asking questions. And somebody goes, guys, I'm sorry, I didn't have time, on Friday, and I didn't have time over the weekend to get through this. And then, later on in the afternoon, I'm hearing them talk about how they binge watched Squid Games on Netflix, right? Yeah. And you had time to do that, and you didn't have time to do what was necessary to show up like a pro at the meeting on Monday morning.
I prioritized, and this wasn't that.
Yeah, and by the way, just change your language. Say, I apologize, guys. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Right. Just say that.
Yep.
And get time out of the vocabulary. Now, coming back to being present, when I learned how to truly own my calendar and calendar everything, I'm no longer thinking 2 weeks ahead or 4 weeks. It's already on my calendar. I put it on my calendar. I don't think about it anymore. And now I can just be present to what's going on here and now.
Good. All right, endure to thrive. Endure. That has something to do with that winter thing. What does this chapter mean?
We're over the winter. We got through the winter, right? Okay. Yeah. So now think about it. Coming into the spring and into the summer, and it is a time for endurance, right? So when you think of endurance, you think of a marathon. You think of this long stretch of time, and presents that opportunity to really thrive. So I find, a lot of people that I've coached, a lot of businesses that I've consulted for, they're always in survival mode, right? They always seem to just be surviving or, spinning on a hamster wheel. Same thing over and over. Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Yep. Well, this particular chapter is talking about, hey, shifting the mindset from that to, by the way, you can endure, and here's what you need to do to make that happen.
This one's got to be a short one because it's self-explanatory. I think lead by example.
Oh yeah, of course. And we talk about it again. You talked about how,
but you have to talk about it because it's one of the important keys.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. And I talk about it. I allude to it in the chapter called "Don't Be a Hypocrite," right? Okay. And then as I get into this chapter, there's just more details around. Look, I say, in order to be a good employer, you have to be a good employee. And in order to be a good leader, you need to be a good follower. And it's really know when to follow, know when to lead, know and understand when you're an owner, and know and understand when you're an employee. And I think a lot of business, so talking about just specifically the entrepreneur, and a lot of business owners forget that they're an employee of their business.
Yeah. So this one, the next one is kind of one of my favorite topics. It's kind of how I've tried how to live the rest of my life, and it's commit to being a lifelong learner.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Look, I tell this. I speak often. I've been teaching a course at the University of San Diego, my alma mater, for the past decade, with the International Ayler School of Business, and I always tell them, I'd love to tell you that your learning ends here, but unfortunately it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't. It's gonna keep going because I once I committed to being a lifelong learner, my thirst for knowledge just went through the roof. And when I say commit to it, I just say, look, submit. I should have said submit rather than commit. It's just submit to it, embrace it, because whether it's reading a book, whether it's getting a mentor, or whether it's having a conversation or listening to a podcast or looking in the mirror or going to a course like Landmark or taking your communication course or an EQ course, all these types of things advance you as a human being.
See, I like that. I like that a lot. So I often get hired by organizations to help their people become better workers and whatever.
Yeah.
That's not my focus. Sorry, bosses, that's not my focus. Yes, they will become better workers when they become better human beings. Yeah. So the programs that we like to teach work at home and at work. Now, they're paid for by work. We're going to get some work done, no question, but it's going to improve their home life too.
Well, it's about improving productivity in life. Yeah. Not just in business or whatever. These are life lessons. So when you do commit to learning at that level, I read a book a month. Yeah. That's the pace that works for me. I occasionally will get two in a month, but that's just the pace that works for me. Others, you'll hear Mark Zuckerberg, and certainly if you watched Inside Bill's Brain, you'll see he's reading 10, a dozen, up to 20 books in a month, and it's pretty incredible.
I do one a week personally, or at least that's the pace I try to keep. Yeah. There's some weeks that I don't, and then there's others where I do two. If I'm on vacation, I've got 2 or 3 books that are done. Yeah, because you have time to do that.
I just happen to be a slow reader, so that's the pace that works for me. Nonetheless, I listen to podcasts. Anytime I get the opportunity to take a course and learn from somebody else, especially those that are better than me, surround yourself with people that you can learn from, and that's all a part of learning, right? It doesn't have to be taking a class or reading a book.
Let's get this last one in. You can't do it alone.
No, you can't. And in fact, I don't, let's just spend 1 minute on it, because we have an upcoming podcast that I think is really going to focus on this and shed some light. At an early age, I was playing sports. So for better part of half my life, I had, teachers and coaches that were a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're just thrust into the world and expected to just figure it out. And then I was almost 40 before it dawned on me. I started to jump into EO and get exposed to what it meant to have a coach, a business coach in your life, this whole concept. And it dawned on me, as like, holy cow, why have I not had a coach for my whole life, right? You think of the professional baseball player,
you
football
wasted
player.
15 years of coaching.
Yeah.
Of not coaching.
Well, look, the professional athletes, right? They've got a coach on their team. They got a hitting coach. They got a pitching coach. They got a catching coach. They've got an athletic trainer. They've got you name it, right?
Endurance coach.
Right. So why is it in life that we think we can just get along without that kind of help and nudge? And by the way, okay, great. I used the athlete as an example. They got a lot of money, or a successful business might have a lot of money to afford high-end coaches. That being said, find a mentor, find an accountability partner, find a friend that's willing to take a call with you. I do a lot of pro bono coaching, right? I mentor at the University of San Diego. I mentor young athletes, and I have guys that have graduated and moved on, and I continue to mentor them. And I don't charge them a penny. Right. You'd be surprised. Just ask, right? Yeah. Just ask somebody, and you'd be surprised at who is willing to say yes and help you.
Someone did it for us. We're going to do it for them.
Absolutely.
All right.
Pay it forward.
Sure. We make a living doing what we do.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, hey, can you take some time? Yeah, I can.
And if you get coached, here's what I'm going to ask you, because you bring up a great point. If you get coached and you have that experience, or you've been coached and you understand the value in it, I ask you pay it forward. So when somebody asks you to do the same for them, or for a young person that's coming up, whatever it might be, pay it forward.
All right, great. So we're at the end. The book is called How to Survive the Wilderness by Vincent Moiso. Thrive.us, where you can find it, or at Amazon. Yeah. This is the playbook for the entrepreneur and the high performer. Here's a look of it. I suggest go and get it. I actually got to read a pre-copy because you asked me to help edit and take a look at what I thought and what changes that I would make. And
you made a nice comment, which is actually on the book. So you're in it.
I get credit in it?
You're in it. You get credit in it. So and I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll tell you just 1 minute before we end, the journey of writing the book was an interesting experience in and of itself. Yeah. And I wrote the book actually really fast. It's content that I've had on paper for a long time. I probably wrote the book in less than 60 days, and it took me about 10 months to edit it. Yeah. And it was just an iterative process that was a lot of fun.
Well, the stuff.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't take long to put the stuff on paper. No. But to put it in a form that people were going to resonate.
Yeah, no, and people like yourself gave great feedback and just, shifting the way things were presented and whatnot. It's interactive. So there's a lot of tools that are included with the book. There's QR codes where you get access to videos and content beyond just the book. So I encourage you to get the hard copy. You can also download the Kindle version on Amazon if you want. It's very inexpensive. I made the book. I priced it intentionally inexpensively because the purpose of the book for me is to get this in front of people so I can share the lessons learned. And if that creates a pathway to success that leads you there a little faster than I got there, then great. The book's done its job.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate hearing the highlights of what you put in the book. I do suggest people take a look and read in the book. If you want to know more about us, you can find us at theceopodcast.net. Theceopodcast.net. You can find us on any of your podcast channels that you listen to us, or even on YouTube if you like the video. Yeah. If you think we're pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Until next time.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. To learn more about Scott and Vince, please visit theceopodcast.net and check out the calendar to tune in for our next episode. While on this site, you can also listen to past episodes, access additional content created for our listeners, and if you would like to dive deeper into any topic, there is an option to schedule some time with Scott or Vince. Thanks for listening.